A clay bowl, old, cracked, with its rim chipped by time. Inside it, a yellowish, murky liquid rests in silence. All around, the acrid smell of a medieval stone room, cold as the grave. A man leans down, dips his fingers into the liquid, scrubs his teeth with vigor, and spits onto the dirt floor. He smiles. White teeth, relatively intact. The secret? Urine, fermented, collected in the morning. Welcome to dental hygiene in the Middle Ages. In the 11th century, an ordinary citizen of any European city woke up without a toothbrush, without fluoride toothpaste, without dental floss. What he had was knowledge passed down from generation to generation, knowledge that, to modern eyes, seems almost unbelievable. But that, within the logic of its time, made perfect sense. Because in the Middle Ages, the mouth was a battlefield, and the warriors who fought for it used weapons that would leave us speechless today. If you've made it this far with your stomach still intact, you're probably going to want to see what comes next. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell, because this is only the beginning. The problem started early. Children of 7, 8 years old already showed the first signs of dental decay. Sugar, though still expensive and rare for the poor, was consumed enthusiastically by the wealthier classes. Honey sweetened the nobles' dishes. Fermented bread stuck to the peasants' teeth. And without any efficient cleaning mechanism, tooth decay advanced like a silent shadow. The physicians of the era, or those who called themselves that, knew this. Medieval medical treatises, many of them compilations of Greek and Arabic texts copied by hand by monks in dimly lit scriptoria, described in detail the ailments of the mouth. The tooth worm, as tooth decay was called, was considered a living creature that inhabited the interior of the molar and gnawed it from within. The cure, therefore, was to kill the worm. The methods ranged from the reasonable to the terrifying. A 12th century treatise, preserved in the library of the Benedictine monastery of Monte Cassino in Italy, recommended fumigating the affected tooth with burning hyssop seeds. The patient was to open his mouth over a container holding the smoldering seeds, let the smoke penetrate the cavity, and, it was believed, the worms would fall dead into the vessel. Modern historians have examined those containers described in the texts. The worms that fell were, in fact, remnants of dental pulp melted by the heat. But the worm was only one of the enemies. The real problem, from the standpoint of daily hygiene, was the odor. Medieval breath was, according to the few records that describe the smells of the era, something that did not pair well with close conversation. And it was precisely there that the most controversial ingredient in the medieval dental arsenal entered the picture. Urine. The practice of using urine as a mouthwash was not a European invention. The Romans had been using it centuries earlier. Pliny the Elder, a Roman encyclopedist of the 1st century, recorded the use of Iberian urine, specifically from Hispania, present-day Spain, as the finest of rinses, claiming that the inhabitants of the peninsula had exceptionally white teeth thanks to the habit. The trade in urine in ancient Rome was so profitable that Emperor Vespasian taxed it. It is from this tax that the expression still used today derives, pecunia non olet. Money has no smell. Medieval Europeans inherited this knowledge, distorted and reinterpreted through centuries of oral tradition. The logic behind the practice was, in its own way, coherent. Urine contains urea, a compound that, as it decomposes, releases ammonia. Ammonia is, in fact, a whitening and antibacterial agent. Without knowing anything about chemistry, medieval dentists had empirically discovered what science would only explain 2,000 years later. Quick pause. Where are you watching this from? Drop your city in the comments below. I'm curious to find out where the people brave enough to watch a video about urine mouthwash come from. But urine was only the beginning. To brush their teeth, or what passed for brushing, the ordinary medieval person turned to a variety of improvised instruments. Thin twigs of walnut, ash, or rue were chewed until the tips split open into fibers, creating something resembling a primitive brush. These twigs, known in Arabic texts as siwak or miswak, had reached Europe through contact with the Islamic world during the Crusades and carried, coincidentally, natural antibacterial compounds. Ashes of burned bones mixed with salt were applied to the teeth with a finger or a piece of rough linen cloth. Powders made from crushed walnut shells promised to whiten the enamel. The wealthiest had access to toothpicks made of gold or silver, displayed ostentatiously in public as a symbol of status. An illustration from a 14th century Flemish manuscript, now held at the Royal Library of Belgium, shows a nobleman seated at the table, picking his teeth with a golden instrument, while his servants serve the banquet. Cleaning one's teeth in plain sight of others was not rudeness, it was a display of wealth. And then there were the cases when preventive hygiene was no longer enough, when the rotted tooth had to come out. Medieval tooth extraction was an event, not an appointment. An event with an audience when possible, and with instruments that belonged more to the blacksmith than to the physician. The barber-surgeon, a central figure in practical medieval medicine, was the one who performed this procedure. With iron pliers, curved hooks, and a brute strength that made up for any lack of technique, he wrenched the offending tooth from the patient, while assistants held down the arms and legs of the unfortunate soul. There was no anesthesia. There was, sometimes, a generous dose of wine or a tincture of mandrake, a plant whose sedative properties were known, but whose adequate doses were a lethal mystery, since too much would simply kill the patient before relaxing him. The most experienced surgeons preferred to work fast. The problem that followed the extraction was the gap left in the smile, and it was here that the Middle Ages developed its most macabre and fascinating practice. Prosthetics made from real human teeth, pulled from mouths that no longer needed them. If this video is leaving you slack-jawed, with all your teeth still in place, hit the like button right now. It helps the channel enormously and ensures we keep bringing you stories nobody ever told you in school. Medieval battlefields were, among other things, a resource. After battles like Agincourt in 1415, where thousands of English and French soldiers died in a single day, the scavengers arrived before the crows. And among what they searched for, beyond armor, coins, and cloth, were teeth. Healthy teeth from young soldiers, pulled from mouths still warm with pliers or bare fingers. Each tooth was a currency. Each tooth was a product. This trade in human teeth for prosthetic use flourished between the 13th and 17th centuries. The teeth were sold to barber-surgeons and itinerant dentists who crafted rudimentary prosthetics tied with silk or metal wire to the patient's remaining teeth. Medieval dental bridges preserved in European museum collections, some at the Museum of the History of Medicine in Paris, others in British institutions, reveal the surprising sophistication of these constructions. Human teeth, sometimes mixed with ox teeth or carved elephant ivory, mounted on frameworks of whalebone. The wealthy, naturally, preferred human teeth. They were whiter, more natural, more like the real thing. Demand was so high that the tooth trade expanded beyond the battlefield. Cemeteries were desecrated. The hanged had their teeth pulled before being taken down from the gallows. There are records from 15th century England of criminal investigations into the theft of teeth from corpses in parish cemeteries, indicating that the practice was illegal, but evidently profitable enough to continue. In Florence, at the height of the Renaissance, while Leonardo da Vinci sketched flying machines and Botticelli painted goddesses rising from the sea, merchants in the Mercato Vecchio sold human teeth in leather pouches, traded like spices. The price varied according to the state of preservation, the size, and the whiteness of the tooth. A healthy molar from a young man was worth more than a day's wages for a stonemason. The Renaissance also brought the first systematic advances in dental understanding. Giovanni da Vigo, an Italian surgeon of the early 16th century, described in his treatise Practica in arte chirurgica copiosa, techniques of dental extraction and restoration with greater precision than any previous text. But even Da Vigo still recommended cauterizing cavities with a glowing iron, pressing the incandescent metal directly onto the exposed nerve to kill the worm once and for all. Suffering was to some extent expected. Dental pain was considered purgation, divine punishment, or simply the price of being alive. Saint Apollonia, a Christian martyr of the 3rd century, had all her teeth pulled out as a form of torture before her execution, and was canonized as the patron saint of dentists and those suffering from toothaches. Her relics, a tooth, preserved in a golden reliquary in Ghent, Belgium, were visited by pilgrims suffering from oral ailments, pleading for divine intercession. Faith and chemistry, the sacred and the repulsive, coexisted in the medieval mouth with the naturalness of those who had never known any other option. And it is in that coexistence that the most revealing point of this entire story lies. Because medieval people were not ignorant. They were pragmatic. They worked with what they had. The urine that rinsed their teeth worked, in a way, at least better than nothing. The chewed walnut twigs worked. The teeth transplanted from dead soldiers worked, until the body rejected them, which invariably happened weeks or months later, with inflammation and pain. They had no fluoride. They had no microscopes to see the bacteria. They had no anesthesia, no antibiotics to treat post-extraction infections that frequently spread to the jaw, the neck, and killed the patient within days. They had fingers, faith, herbs, urine, and the teeth of the dead. And they did what they could. We return to the clay bowl, the yellowish liquid, the man who smiles. Now we know what is inside that bowl. We know where it comes from. We know why. And perhaps, just perhaps, the disgust we feel when we look at it carries within it a small measure of respect for the human being who used it, who lived, who suffered, and who, despite everything, still wanted to smile. The mouth is, after all, the first window we open to the world. In the Middle Ages, as today, people wanted it to be clean, to be intact, to be presentable. The methods were macabre. The intention was human. If you made it to the end, congratulations. And thank you. Hit the like button if this video surprised you. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And turn on the bell notification. History has many more secrets like this one waiting to be told.